Confused. Okay, actually, it is time. Hello, welcome to my talk. So we're off to a great start. Okay, my clicker does work. Yes, welcome to Aligning Around Level Design. This is the studio culture behind creating great levels. This is actually a sort of sequel, sort of remake to my very first conference talk, which I gave back in 2001. It was called Great Level Design is a Studio-Wide Effort. Main difference is back then I was like a member of the team, and I've spent several years now as a director, so I have a lot of new things to say about this topic. So let's get started. So hello, everybody. My name is Dana Nightingale. My pronouns are she, her, and I am here talking with you today because I have a long personal history with level design, maybe 13-ish maps. I'm not sure how I came by that number, but I'm sure I knew what I was doing, that I've shipped, only counting like professional work. I've been doing this for a while, and now I am the campaign director at Arkane Studios in Lyon, which is also a studio with a long celebrated history of level design. A lot of people have had a lot to say about our levels. And, you know, when we look online or just talk to people, it seems like everyone has either their favorite level or their list of their favorite levels. And so it seems like we're doing a pretty good job. But I think it's important to define what we consider a great level for our studio. So we have a couple of things that we look for. We want it to elevate the game's pillars, systems of play, narrative and themes, art direction, and the game's technology. We want it to capture the player's imagination. It needs to evoke a desire to engage with the game's world and the protagonist's goals. It should feel like a place or a moment in time that matters. And it's an experience that stays with the player after they finish the game. They will remember it and talk about it. And of course, finally, it needs to be delivered on a schedule, on a budget, to system specs. It must meet accessibility needs and hopefully isn't too terribly buggy. But what am I actually going to talk about today? Because I'm not really giving a level design talk. This is how Arkane has achieved this reputation, at least as much as I can explain in a couple of minutes. And maybe a couple of ideas that could help your studio maybe do something similar, I hope. That's my goal anyway. We'll see if we can get there. This is not a talk about how an Arkane level designer does their work. There are other talks about that. You can check out, there's just 2 examples that you can look at on YouTube, nor is it a talk about my own work that I do personally. Again, there's YouTube videos that you can check out to see information about that. This is about the ways that alignment, which is a word we like to use, it means working towards a common goal. It's not the same as being in agreement. It means we're all in this together, we're all focused on the same objective. It's fundamental to our processes. And it can illuminate many of the roles and processes that we rely on to achieve our goals of great level design. So, what's this talk going to do? Here's the plan. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, step number 1, you've got to hire a lot of level designers. Really important. Just, you know, hire everyone you can find. Got to catch them all. And then you got to, I think this is a point people forget, is you got to like say, hey, level designer, do it. Like make the level, go. And then just give them unlimited time and creative freedom. Just go nuts. No schedule, no budget. It'll be great. And I think if you follow these 4 simple steps, you'll see that you'll sell just an infinity number of copies. Yeah, I'm sure. It'll be great. Okay, thank you for coming for my TED Talk. Okay, so clearly, let's get back to reality now. We are going to cover a couple of challenges. The first one is a forever evolving studio internally and games industry. Next, we're going to look at leadership bottlenecks. And then finally, challenge 3, we're going to draw the rest of the owl. Game dev is really hard. We're going to break that down a little bit more when we get there. So let's start off with this evolving industry. So this is a little timeline of the history of Arkane, which was founded in 1999, like last millennia. It's crazy. But very soon after that, we have something weird happening. This is called the dot-com bubble burst. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it derailed my first career. I was going to do web development. That didn't happen, thank goodness. 1 year later, we have Xbox release, joining Nintendo and PlayStation. This is kind of the dawn of the modern console era. And then a couple of years later, Steam arrives, which is the dawn of digital distribution. And already just a couple of years after its conception, Arkane is finding itself in a radically different games industry than when it started. And really, over the next couple of years, it kind of struggled to find its identity. There was a lot of canceled projects. This is delightfully documented in a no-clip documentary of all the canceled projects Arkane dealt with during this period. And then 2008, global financial crisis derails my career again. I thought I was going to be an architect. Thank God that didn't happen. 2010, Arkane is acquired by ZeniMax. That's the parent company of Bethesda Softworks. And this is also when Arkane acquires me. So finally, I enter the scene. 2 years later, Arkane releases their first real mainstream hit, Dishonored. And then immediately we see the industry just trending away from us. This becomes kind of the era of games as a service. This arrives on the scene. And we kind of start to see the dawn of the indie auteur era, with the concept of the celebrity indie dev, solo dev kind of takes over the industry zeitgeist. And Arkane is just overwhelmingly neither of these things. But we stay the course, we stick with it, and then our lives change in 2020. Now we have COVID, everything is turned upside down. And then ZeniMax, our parent company, now has a parent company. We're now part of Xbox. This is kind of overwhelming. And now we find ourselves in 2024. I might be here with you today, I might not. This might be an illusion. And I think we can all agree that this is a time of tremendous uncertainty in the games industry. It's kind of stressful, obviously, honestly. But the question remains, how do we stay the course? How do we stay true to ourselves, our studio's value, our studio values? How do we have this goal of a clearly formed and expressed studio culture that allows the team to stay the team that it is and make the games that it wants to make? There's really no simple answer to this, but honestly, one great tool that we have is this internal handbook. It is an actual document. It outlines the studio's values and principles. This is part of the onboarding process for our new team members. It defines what unites us, why we're all here, why we joined the studio. And also how we measure success, which is why at the start of the presentation, I outlined our definition of what makes a great Arkane level. It's important for everyone to understand what the goal is, what we're all working towards. It's our decision-making filters. It's our approach to alignment and autonomy. It's important to actually define what these words mean for our employees. I hope during this talk I'll define them. Maybe I forgot to. I hope I didn't. And it's also our culture of overcoming challenges and seeking improvement. So this is not a we're a family statement. This is the studio's reason to be, our raison d'être. A family needs no raison d'être, right? It states the studio's goals and how we plan to achieve them. And unity around these goals is the path to weathering this uncertain landscape of a shifting industry. We got through that one pretty fast. Let's look at the next one, leadership bottlenecks. What's this about? So let's first talk about what Arkane is not. We're not a democracy. We do not have any form of rule by committee. We are not operating on consensus. In these types of scenarios, if everyone must agree, then conflicts can be avoided. Difficult decisions get postponed. Or we are also not a strongest voice wins culture. Here you can have this kind of dynamic where people are vying for power, everything gets very political, and it can result in a project that could have very strong individual elements but lacks a cohesive identity. If everyone has to shout the loudest to get their ideas in, you can't really have something that exists harmoniously. But here's what we could be instead, considering our studio culture. We could be operating on a clear hierarchy, where decision-making is based on rank, where ownership is reserved for those in leadership roles. We could have an auteur leader who makes big statements like, go forth and fill the world with rats. We could call this an authoritative organization and a conformist culture. I didn't make that up, someone else did, but let's keep it simple and just call this person the dictator. This is a dictatorship. So Let's dig into it a bit more. Let's give it a fair shake. So here we have a strict validation pipeline for all output. How does that look? So, for example, a level designer receives tasks. They go forth and do the work. Everything is reviewed. Is it exactly what was asked for? Does it run afoul of some unknown constraint? Does it pass the vibe test? I think we might have all heard this before. I'll know it when I see it, and this isn't it. That's not very creative. That's not very constructive. So in this organization, leadership is overwhelmed because they just are constantly reviewing work and being like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's a kind of a bottleneck. There's a huge validation queue. The diversity of ideas is limited because all of the ideas has to come from the leadership. The team will find difficulty in achieving creative fulfillment because they have no creative input. They're just being given tasks. Personal investment of the team members will erode. And as team members become more senior, more experienced, they want to leave. They want to seek opportunities elsewhere. So the team kind of falls apart. So what we want to try to do is something outlined by our studio founder and current studio head, which we call a centralized direction with decentralized input. So imagine instead we've got a team leader who says something like, we need a dangerous element for our levels that fits with the game's themes of plague and decay and our pillar of supernatural stealth action. And maybe a game designer could say, how about swarms of bloodthirsty rats? And another designer might say, oh my gosh, we have this power that lets the player possess things. What if the player could possess one of the rats? And then they could run around as a little rat. And then maybe another designer could say, well, we could create new paths in our levels that like only a rat that can go through, and the player has to possess a rat to pass through them, and they can go through like cracks in the walls and under tables and through tunnels. It'll be great. And suddenly, ideas are coming from everywhere. So we can call this an innovative organization and a collaborative culture. That's still a mouthful. Let's just go with the goal setter. So let's compare and contrast. Let's have a little cage match between these two. So we already know our dictator. With the goal setter, we still have a hierarchy, but it's based on responsibilities, not the rank of the person giving the orders. We have a leadership team who still has creative ownership, but it's over the global vision of the project. They will provide alignment tools to meet the project's goals. These could be the game's pillars and themes, something we call design filters, which is a list of ideas that helps us narrow down solutions to problems to understand what does and doesn't fit the game. And it could also be the project's constraints. These could be creative or technical. And finally, of course, it's also the studio's culture and values, which is defined in that handbook. The teams will then work autonomously to break the vision down into goals, or break the goals down. So we want to turn these into problems to solve, and then solutions to those problems. The solutions will then be validated first. Before any work is done, we look at the actual solution that has been proposed by the team. Are they aligned with the goal? And do they actually solve the problem? Often they don't. We have to check that first. And finally, what tasks do they then break down into? Because in the end, you still need tasks. Finally, the tasked work itself is validated once it's complete. And we'll look at, have the problems been solved, and is the work up to our quality standards, which is like incredibly important. So, do we jettison our dictator into space? Do we throw them in the bin? Actually, they can come in handy sometimes. So the dictator is still spawned when there's a crisis and time is limited, which can often happen. We might need to put together a critical action plan. Someone has to be like very decisive. Maybe we have to make cuts in order to meet the goals, and someone has to make the tough decision that no one else wants to face. Or maybe we just need to ship, and we have to say, end of discussion, this is the decision, we're going forward. All right, now it's time for the big one. Let's get into it. Oops, skip the animation. Let's go, come on. We're gonna ask the question, how does anyone ever make a game? But you know what? This is supposed to be like, level design is the title, but I haven't talked about level design. Am I gonna get around to that? Yeah, kind of, but you know, this is about making not just levels, but great levels, so let's go. This breaks down into a bunch of sub-challenges. You knew there was going to be more challenges. It's never that easy. So first we have overwhelming interdependencies. A lot of disciplines have to come together to work on the levels. There's the markup, that is the sunk cost. What does that mean? I'll explain later. There's also design determinism. I'll also explain that later. And finally, information silos, which I just demonstrated by withholding information on the previous two topics. We're going to start with these overwhelming interdependencies, and really, the only way to confront this is with a lot of really important partnerships. We call these our key partnerships. So let's get started with between the level design leadership and the project's leadership. We've got a creative director who is kind of forming the core of the game's vision, and the creative director will contribute with leads of various teams all around the studio. We're all working together to improve and augment, expand the vision. We try to operate under a strong opinions, loosely held mentality, which is trust your experience, trust your knowledge, trust your expertise, but always be open for new information, be willing to change your mind, because we often disagree. And these goal setters are providing the level design team with what is needed to begin their work. It is the vision per level, which includes an elevator pitch. How do you explain this level in, I don't know, 10 seconds? It's the thematic layer. It's the gameplay hook. Now, how does this level represent the game's pillars, or at least the gameplay pillars? And it's the arcane touch. How does this feel like an arcane game? We also have to answer some specific questions, like what is the player's goal here? Who are their adversaries? We always have adversaries. And where will the player go? What locations will they visit during this? And when in the game does this level take place? So let's combine all this and we'll call it not just the vision, this is vision plus plus, because a lot of people contribute to this. Click again, there we go. This is the key partnership between the level design leadership and the level design team itself. So we do not have a sink or swim environment. We are offering guidance and mentorship. We do weekly roundtables, map reviews, syncs, one-on-ones, all that good stuff. We have a library of instructional material on our tools. We have contributed to the Arkane handbook itself. I've written an awful lot of that myself. We are creating level design workflows and best practices. We're defining the immersive sim principles, more on that later. And it's also our guide to creating player intentionality, which I would love to get into in more detail, but we don't have 8 hours. We offer together, the 4 of us, almost 60 years of combined experience as developers at Arkane. Yeah, well, we're all like in our 40s or something. It's crazy. So, what even is level design? I have good news. We do not need a dictionary because I'm here. So I'm going to define level design. Okay, so I like to break level design into a couple of critical parts. And in other studios, these may even be completely different roles, but at Arkane, a level designer is responsible for all of these. We have the map itself. This is the space the player experiences. This is the location. This is the art. This is all the data that the rendering engine pushes onto the screen. It's also the data. It's the file that everyone on the team opens to do their work in. We call it the map. There's the mission itself. This is the player and the protagonist's goals. These are the player-facing elements of the experience. This is how we integrate the level design work with the work of the narrative team and the user experience designers. We have the mechanics. This is the systems of play. This is the game's rules. This is everything that makes the game a game. It's the technology that allows the gameplay to happen. So often in this talk, I'll use the term vignette. This is really kind of vaguely defined, but think about it as like one single unit of player experience in level design. It could be a combat experience. It could be a puzzle, investigation, a story moment, really anything. Important thing is it has like a beginning, middle, of end. It's a cohesive experience. It can be any size, and they can often be broken down into smaller vignettes. So when I say vignette, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's look at key partnerships within the level design team itself. So all the level designers are collaborating, and again, these could be separate roles in the studio, but here Level designers do it all. So we could have level designers who are map owners, and another level designer could be a co-owner of that map. Sometimes two LDs will own the same map. But often a vignette could get proposed for another map, and then that level designer will then collaborate with the actual map owner to do like maybe the mission or mechanics design in that map. We will have level designers do mission authorship. A level designer could be designing a mission that includes many vignettes that occur across the game. It could take place in maps owned by other level designers. They will collaborate. And we always like to do choices and consequences throughout their games, so the LDs will always collaborate with those. Hey, I want the player to make a choice here. We need there to be consequences. Where else in the game could these consequences come up? That kind of thing. They will propose mechanics. They love to propose a new gameplay mechanic that could see global use used throughout the game. Or maybe there's a bespoke mechanic that only exists on one map, and another LD could come in and say, hey, that's interesting. I like that. Let's develop that for use throughout the entire game. And then now it's showing up in everyone else's maps. I need a drink of water. Gosh. Sorry, everybody. Excuse me. Okay, so we have another type of level designer. They're technical level designers. They are advising, supporting, and creating along with the rest of the level design team. They are creating resources for global use. These could be prefabs. These are collections of art and scripts and logic that are designed to be dragged and dropped into our maps, or modular scripts. Basically, something where you do the work once and it can be used anywhere. They'll often create prototypes of work like developed by the systems designers, and write setup guidelines so that every level designer knows exactly how to use this system in their maps. They'll develop naming conventions, scripting best practices, that kind of thing. They'll also be monitoring the team's technical debt and sounding the alarm and assisting in mitigation when it gets too high. The tech LDs will often be partnered, like officially, with specific level designers. They're going to collaborate to find improvements in the work on the technical scale. And they will be offering training to the entire level design team on the proprietary tools that the tech LDs are actually collaborating with the engine team to develop. Let's talk about that a bit more. Let's talk about the engine and tools. So together, they work to keep the engine team's goals aligned with the level design team's needs. They'll co-author the tools that the level design team uses. We have all of our own proprietary tools, all built in-house. And they're looking to see, can these tools handle unexpected situations? They will learn the engine or platform constraints, which is really critical to know. Like, you have to know what the constraints are before you start designing. And they'll design the guidelines for the level design team around those constraints. And sometimes those constraints kind of don't really match up with what we really need to do to meet the project's goals. So they'll like brainstorm with the tools teams to find ways to mitigate those constraints and see if there's a way to achieve our goals even with them. So taking a more global approach, not talking about just the level design team now, we have a pairing that we call product owner and power users. If you know about Scrum, you might have heard of product owner before. So the product owners are on the tech teams. They will own, document, and research the tech requests. And they're defining the goals and the definition of success for each system, feature, mechanic, tool, whatever we need to make the game. They are then evaluating and providing feedback on the feature or tool. So the power users exist on other teams. Our technical level designers will often be power users for various features. They need to become experts on those features, tools, mechanics, whatever it is, and then share advanced knowledge with the rest of their team. And they are guiding the team on consistent use practices to make sure that if we have a mechanic that exists here, every level designer is implementing that mechanic the same way across the game. And they will also gather feedback from the level design team to provide to the product owner to let them know, hey, this tool or mechanic doesn't quite work the way we need to. Can we continue to iterate on it to make it better for them? Oh no, a wild challenge appears. What's this? This is markup is a sunk cost. Let's define that before we go any further. So what's markup? This is work that is done inside the map that largely, for the most part, this is allowing the art to agree with the game's systems. Tools are needed to create it, and it often represents what is already true. So it's running a spectrum. A lot of markup requires care and thought to put together. You need to say, okay, we're going to drop some more data here to let the game know that this is a place the player can climb, or this is a thing the player can interact with in some way. The art exists, the systems exist. This is just data we're dropping in to allow it to actually happen. And honestly, a lot of this markup is just mindless busy work, and really a robot should be doing it. So what's sunk cost? This is time and therefore money, because we're a business, we want to get paid, that you can't get back. And markup, if it gets thrown out, is really a sunk cost, because often it's dead, it's useless, it's gone. It's all time wasted. So this becomes kind of a problem for us because we have this culture of iteration. Iteration is really important to us. In fact, our creative director likes to say, we don't reboot. We either iterate until it works or we kill it. There's no in between. There's no just starting over from scratch. But the problem is that for markup, every time you're iterating, it's kind of a reboot, because if you need to change the level geometry, if you need to change the way the system works, often all that markup has to be thrown out and redone. So when you iterate on a design, all that markup needs to be thrown out and redone. This disincentivizes doing markup, because the level designer could say, well, we're not sure about the design yet, so I'm not going to do any of the markup. And then you just never know. And this could disincentivize doing iteration. I've already done the markup. It's not working quite the way I want, but you know what? It's fine. It's fine. We can ship it like that. This can become tedious and time-consuming. This will erode the team's morale. And eroded morale is its own sunk cost. So let's see if we can find a key partnership that can help us here. We have our gameplay programmers who are working with our tech artists and our tech LDs, and they're really often truly trying to find complex solutions to complex problems. We try to find fully systemic solutions if possible. We want the way the game system works to work, not require markup at all. It can just use raycast, collision data, whatever you need, so the level designer never has to touch it. That's ideal. If that's not possible, for some features, it's just not possible at all. We might find an automated system, some process that can go into the map and do the markup automatically. That's kind of the make a robot do it solution. And if neither of those are possible, yes, the level designer will have to go in and do it themselves, but that's what's good about having our own internal tools team. They can build a tool for the team that is hopefully ergonomic, not too tedious to use, and they can get the job done. We're going to try to do this in roughly this ratio. Doesn't always work out that way, but it's kind of the goal we aim for. And this has to be aligned with the studio's culture of iteration, because we're going to iterate a lot. We're going to iterate way more than we even realize. So this is way out of scope for this talk. I do go into more detail on this in the old version. In fact, I recently did kind of a developer commentary of me reacting to myself giving the talk. And we did an impromptu audience Q&A during this section. It ran for an hour. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about this. But you can check that out on YouTube now. You can go to my YouTube channel. But let's keep moving, because there's a lot of more topics to cover here. So this is a topic that's really important to me. I think the team needs to be held accountable for this. The tool ergonomy is a must-have. You can't just say, whatever, the level designers will do the work. They can tank it. It's fine. Because we have to make sure we're using sustainable processes that ensure long-term team health. We want to keep using the same team over and over for each game. That's an ideal situation. So we're going to commit to an objective, and we're going to add it to our definition of success. So a great Arkane level is also created by a happy and healthy team who are using sustainable processes that can be repeated for ongoing success. All right, let's get back to it. So this is our keyest partnership. This is with our co-authors and our cohorts. This is the level artists. So together we form le binôme. This is the shared authorship of the map. Try not to puff on the microphone too much. So one critical thing about the way we do this is there's no art pass. The level designer and level artist will begin work independently and then merge. We have level design deliverables and level art deliverables, and I'm gonna break these down in overwhelmingly too little time. When I'm onboarding a new level design team member, this is like the entire afternoon going over all of these. So let's go over them super fast. We have intentions documentation. This is the clearly expressed goals behind all the level designers' plans. This is not just what the design is, but the reasons behind it. It's also the whys. There's the level design diagram. This is not a map. This is not a literal representation of their proposal. This is a chart demonstrating player progression, space types, and circulation hierarchy. And finally, there's the essential prototype. It's not quite a gray box. This is in-engine, playable map proving out the layout, gameplay mechanisms, and simple vignette setup, but it critically contains no art intentions. It's just to prove out the vignette design and the circulation in 3D. Meanwhile, at the same time, the level artists are beginning with conceptual dioramas. These are high-level explorations of the visual themes and art intentions behind the location. From that, they're creating modular kits. It's those dioramas broken down into prolific modular parts, and they use those modular parts with all three of the level designers' deliverables to create the architectural base in close accordance with both teams' goals. So this is what gets merged. This creates the basic map. This is the first pass at integrating all of those gameplay mechanisms and mission vignettes into the architectural base. This is very messy. It requires iteration. But once it's been iterated, we have what we call the first playable. This is the finally playable version of the both team members' work that fully represents the level designer's intentions and the art vision behind it. So this is a project-long pairing. The idea is that these two team members have their own expertise, their own ingenuity, their own creative potential. We want to bring all of that out. We don't want one to be subordinate to the other. And they're going to work together, iterating, playing off one another's strengths until the project ships. And this is only possible through alignment because these two team members are starting off in isolation. They're working on their own thing, and they have to bring that work together in the end. So alignment is absolutely necessary for that merge to take place. Time for another drink. Certainly a producer is necessary in this process, not just necessary, but they're kind of like the architect of this process. We have one producer for both teams, and they're an active member of both teams' leadership. They're not just building tasks or building schedules. They're part of how this process happens. They're like helping the two teams coordinate really closely. So this is a pretty long talk, but honestly, if there's just one takeaway that you can take from it, like if you need to leave right now, it's okay, because I've made the most important point. It's this process. This is fundamental to Arkane's process, or this is our signature approach to creating our levels, is this collaboration between art and level design. Please don't leave. So you might have noticed that we have a missing piece of the puzzle here. What is that? This is the mise en scène, which I can say here because I have a French audience and it's awesome. But literally translated, this is the set dressing. This is the environmental storytelling. This is the verisimilitude. It's vraisemblance en français. This is the appearance of being real or true. This is what makes the map into a place. And this is a place with a history that has experienced the passage of time. This is a place where people are living or have lived. This is 1,000 little touches that lends the environment credibility. It's also the mechanics support. This is the implementation of elements derived from our performance affordance concepts. It could be context clues. This is signal to the player opportunities or hazards. These are mission or vignette design elements. And it's also all those little touches that leads the player's eyes. It's the use of lighting. It's the use of all these little elements that, occasionally we need the player to stop looking at the floor and lift their eyes a little higher. Maybe you look up to find that thing. The mise en scène is how we accomplish that. Now, this is supported, of course, by our world-class art direction and team of incredible concept artists. And these folks, consistently blow our mind, honestly. They are working to establish the identity of the world as a project goal. They're ensuring tonal and thematic consistency with narrative and the world that we're creating. They're fleshing out specific moments and places. Sometimes they're envisioning this situation. Sometimes it's a situation that's been developed by the level design team. A concept artist can still develop that with us. And they're also keeping the player's options in gameplay spaces readable at a glance. They're not just creating a bunch of amazing pieces of artwork. They're using all of our principles of visual identity and affordance concepts in the concept art as one of their guiding principles as well. So they are going to naturally work really closely with the rendering engineers. You can't have art in a game without rendering. So they want to create fidelity between the concept art and what's on the player's screen. Art isn't just an idea. We actually want the game to look like that. And they want to support the tuning of the smallest detail. So they're also working with the tools developers. So they, like they are doing for the level design team, they're creating tools for tech art, art, and all the other folks that allow the artists to do quality work rapidly, we hope. And again, got to provide that tool ergonomy. You want sustainable processes that allow the team to repeat their successes. The environment artists are working pretty much with everybody. These folks just collaborate with basically every other team in the entire studio. They're creating the entire world. They're going to detail out those modular parts that the level artists have created, but they're also creating, the grounds, the floors, the skyboxes, the props, the furniture, the clutter, and a million, I said 1,000 here, but now I'm exaggerating. Yeah, let's go with million. All these little gameplay needs that have to be supported in the art they're working on. I am not qualified to talk about the work environment artists, so let's move on. We, of course, have lighting artists. They're bringing the architecture to life. A player cannot experience a space unless it is lit, and then, again, there's an entire talk to be done about just this topic. They want to tie the tone and theme to a setting. You can light a map completely differently, and suddenly it feels like a new place. And naturally, like I mentioned before, we need to draw the player's gaze, and lighting is one of our most important tools to do that. There's certainly also our VFX artists. They're not just making things feel real, but kind of hyper-real. They're adding texture and emotion through detail and movement, and they're going to pair that with sound and animation and provide critical gameplay clues. So many gameplay clues are provided with these. This isn't just making it more pretty. This is letting the player know what is and what's possible. And certainly, atmosphere is important. It's really important to me, and the VFX artists are absolutely integral to that. And there's a UX element to this too, because lighting and VFX can really provide clear and instant feedback to the player on an interaction or an event, something's happening. Sometimes this is the first way the player knows. So all of these folks here in yellow and green are working together to create some of these memorable scenes and moments that honestly often get credited to level designer, and certainly we have had a big hand in this, but none of this stuff that's on the screen would be possible without the tremendous effort of all of the folks on the art team and rendering team. Okay, let's talk about level mechanics now. This is the work of the systems designers. So many gameplay systems can only be fully realized until they're within the map itself. They can't just work conceptually. They can't work in isolation. And how they are integrated by the level designers determines both teams' mutual success. System design and level design will fail unless they're working in perfect harmony. We have pairings called design buddies. These are features or mechanics owners that are paired with a level designer. The level designer is consulted, offered feedback, and assist in prototyping. It's kind of like that product owner power user pairing we talked about earlier. It's a bit less formal than that. And then they will act as the point of contact among level designers concerning that feature. And they will work with level designers on that feature's tools and implementation workflow to, again, make sure it's implemented consistently across the game and hopefully make fewer bugs when it's getting set up. So these are two teams, level design and system design, that have common goals. And our studio, a really important goal is we want an immersive, simulated world where the gameplay includes simulated aspects that define consistent actions and reactions regardless of context. The player knows that if they do this thing, it'll behave the same way everywhere. And we want encounters that foster player intentionality, which in a super small nutshell means that players have a goal and they can make a plan to overcome obstacles in order to achieve it. And it's their own plan. It's not what the game told them to do. Another thing that's really important to us is the emergence of novel outcomes. These are these intuitive interactions that can lead to these moments that we love so much where the player goes, will this work? And then it works, and it's incredible. And sometimes we never even planned it. That's the emergence part. So to achieve these common goals, we have common tools. There's the metrics of the 3D game world. There's the player affordance concepts. And there's the immersive sim philosophies. And there's our next challenge. Now we have to face design determinism. Now, what the heck is that? This is when you have a strict adherence to the rules that results in a predictable or predetermined outcome. This is my favorite challenge. So let's break these down a little bit here. So metrics are the shapes and sizes that allow the systems to function in a simulated analog environment. But if employed zealously, this can result in samey, rote, lifeless, predictable architecture and mise-en-scène. The player affordance concepts really stem from form implies identity, what the thing is implies function, what can be done with it. And this can dictate a set of rules for the game's art that's based on the player's verbs. And if taken to its logical conclusion, this can create a world that feels like it exists only for the player. Now, these immersive sim philosophies include consistent simulated environments, can allow for intuitive, emergent outcomes, but you know what? They're also cloaked in a nebulous shroud of esoteric ideas defining how to qualify as a true immersive sim, and I hate it. This can be incredibly dogmatic, so let's attack this one first. Now, to be clear, this is not about keeping video game scholars happy. You're never going to satisfy them. They're chasing their own dragon. Don't even try. They're going to have their own definition of success. The team needs its definition of success. So you don't want to leave the team's objectives open to interpretation. You want to keep immersive sim or Souls-like, roguelike, Metroidvania, cozy game, whatever it is you're making as the design philosophy, but you still need the game's pillars, themes, design filters, and goals. You have to define those independent of everyone's concept of what this type of game is. You have to keep the goals specific and achievable. And when you get into a design debate or a philosophical debate or any kind of debate, you need alignment and you need constraints. You need to be working towards the same goal. All of this above work only works, sorry, what am I saying here? All the above work together to form creative constraints. These philosophical or dogmatic debates must take place within the confines of these constraints. And these creative constraints need to be held as law. They have to be as strict and firmly held as any of the technical constraints. It's like, no, this is our creative constraint, no past here. So both are needed to confront these challenges, the technical and the creative constraints. Okay, so let's get into player affordance concepts. So we like to say, if it looks doable, let the player do it. But really, we only say that outside of the studio. That's something we say to the fans and to the press and all those folks. What really gets said within the studio is, if the player can't do it, don't let it look doable. So this is one of our rules of thumb, but we don't want rules of thumb. We want something more concrete. And it's also part of a larger idea, a design filter. As I mentioned before, design filters are how we narrow down solutions. So there could be a problem, 12 solutions get proposed, and the filters help us say, okay, only these 3 solutions fit the filter, so we're gonna go with them. And one of these is readable play possibilities. We have another one called believable worlds. This is really important to the mise-en-scène philosophy. So yes, like I said, design filters narrow down solutions. So how do we balance the readability of play possibilities and keep the world believable? So we want a different type of rule now. These are applied on a case-by-case basis as gameplay codes. So a code isolates points of action with simple, consistent visual language. And let me see if I remember how to use my arrow pointer. So when we have a cable like that and something heavy hanging from it, when we add that weak point, that very obvious kind of unrealistic, like this doesn't exist in real life, but it's just accepted that this works this way in video games, now the player understands 2 things. Attack here, but also the rest of the cable is just art. So now the artist, when they're doing the mise-en-scène, can add ropes, cables, cuttable things everywhere, and the player allows it to blend in with just the world. It can be part of just the art, the set dressing. The player is looking for those special weak points of shoot here to make safe drop. So these have to coexist with the purely aesthetic mise-en-scène of the play spaces. The art, narrative, and systems will collaborate together. This is not something that's being dictated by one team to create these visual codes. All right, metrics are a means unto an end. Metrics are tools intended to achieve an outcome in gameplay. And to get these, we really have to be flexible. And we really need to be flexible in 2 ways. So like anything else, metrics must be iterative. They can't just be decided once and like, okay, here's the metric. We're going to stick to it until we ship. So we need to look for ways to find ranges of values that can be considered to allow shapes and sizes to have variation. This is both for the sake of iterating on the metric of like, okay, so somewhere between 1 and 2 meters fits, and then you iterate on it, and maybe you can narrow it down, but still, it's ideal to have a range so that not everything is the exact same shape in the world, which is how you get that really gamey feeling environment where, you know, like this is unrealistic proportions for everything, but it's just what we need for the animations. So we need to then build processes and workflows around finding and iterating on these iterations. It has to be built into the way all the teams to work to say, here's the first attempt at the metric, we're going to go for this range, we're going to iterate on it before we do all those motion capture sessions and now it's set in stone. And of course, we want to use our key partnerships. The people designing, implementing, and relying on the metrics all must have the opportunity to spot issues spot issues with it and opportunities for improvement. So these are a lot of really complex topics, a lot of big things. Each one of these could be its own talk. We need a key partnership that navigates this complexity and gets us across the finish line. So to do that, we're going to bring in our dev testers. These folks are within the studio. They're not just testing the game, they're testing the tools too. They're of course doing bug discovery, reproduction, fix verification. And honestly, it's never too early to begin the dev testing. Pre-production, we're already doing dev testing. They are gathering specialized knowledge in all of these topics. They're going to be embedded within the features teams. If you have like a system designer and level design buddy, there's going to be a dev tester right there with them. They will work to conduct smoke tests on systems, tools, and level mechanics for each build. Way too big of a topic to get into right now, but let's keep going. And they need to be available for targeted reviews of level design topics for stability and completeness. Level designer says, I have this work finished. I want to make sure it actually works the way I think it does. Can you spare a dev tester for 2 hours to help me test it and help me make sure it works? Usually we'll be able to get that. Another important member of this team are the build managers. I love these folks. They are assembling and delivering the game's builds. Like, these are the people that allow you to actually play the game. You're just throwing data into a depot. How does it come together into a game? Well, that's what build managers are helping us do. They're operating a continuous integration system that monitors all submitted content for errors, and there's going to be errors, and they are operating a build farm for the map teams. They will often be partnered with what we like to call map angels. These are specific level designers or level artists who have responsibility for each map to conduct the build, spot issues with the build, work with the build managers to investigate the issues if anything pops up. So everyone knows who's building the map when, and they know who to talk to when there's an issue. These folks are going to work closely with the tech artists and the rendering teams and various power users to also ensure performance and stability. You need the frames per second. I think frames per second are very important. It seems like a lot of people online also agree with me. If we ever go below 60, they let us know. So they want to optimize the code and the level of detail to meet the frame rate targets, but they also want to work with the level designers in the maps themselves and the level artists to spot line of sight or draw distance issues of like, wow, we're never going to hit 60 FPS with this line of sight. We have to find a solution to this. They're also looking for entity on screen limits. Like, I'm sorry, you cannot have like 18,000 torches in this scene. We're never going to hit 60 FPS. Let a few of them go. They're going to work with the map teams to ensure smooth, uninterrupted gameplay. And you know what? Creative constraints just help you be more creative. I think we all need to listen to these folks. Naturally, we have the QA team itself. These are the folks on the publisher side doing work that's very similar to the dev testers, but on the game itself. And they're going to begin testing a bit later into production. So, of course, they're super critical to late-game bug prioritization and triage. There's no way to fix every bug. You have to be able to figure out really carefully which are the most important bugs to fix, because every bug fix can cause more bugs. And they will collaborate with the dev testers to achieve certification on target platforms. You've got to actually ship at some point. Now we've got our user researchers, and these are folks outside of the studio. These are folks working on audience reception analysis, and they will conduct simulated game reviews. They are going to conduct external play tests with a curated list of testers for your game, and they can be partnered with our internal playtest coordinator. These reports are consolidated with the internal feedback, because everyone in the studio is also constantly giving us feedback on the game itself. And this input is monitored closely to understand when the project has to pivot. Sometimes everything adds up and you realize you need to make big changes, and I go into a lot of detail on this on my previous talk called DEATHLOOP's User Research, User Experience DEATHLOOP. You can also find that on YouTube. Oh my God, I'm way over time. I'm so sorry. So let's answer the question, what did I come here to do? This is where the narrative designers and story direction comes in. They are going to provide the entire team with the characters and their relationships and conflicts, the interconnected narrative threads, story arcs, and character motivations, the nuance that connects our fantastic worlds to relatable human experiences, and the fertile ground to plant and nurture new ideas. This is the stuff that allows other designers to bring their own ideas to the table, because they'll understand the world, the story, the characters, all the characters' motivations, and that lets them bring the new ideas in. Click. There we go. Oh, wow. It was a great animation, trust me. The story, art, and creative directors begin very early in the project to develop the game's themes and tone, the protagonist's identity, the central conflicts that are involved in the scenario, the history and culture of the setting. And this is when the campaign director comes in. Hi, that's me. So we'll work together to break the story down into goal milestones. These goal milestones form the player-facing missions. All missions combine to form the game's campaign. And then when the level art leadership, we'll break these down into the locations that the player would visit, and then the location, when paired with a mission, defines the map. They're going to come and chase me off stage any minute now. So, the narrative and level designers will also pair up. The missions then have to break down into specific objectives. These form the basis for intentionality. The player always knows what they're here to do, which allows them to make informed decisions about what they want to do next. The intentionality allows for choices and consequences, and this opens the door for agency, a sense that what their player is doing actually matters. So they're not just making decisions that then just get lost in the game's data. Those decisions will then play out as they're continuing to play the game, and they'll see the consequences of those. That's what we call agency. So the mise en scène will then work on the mise en scène pairs narrative with art. This is linking character and place through theme often, and it's crafting why is this place like it is, or what happened here yesterday, often called environmental storytelling. They also want to address localization topics. They're not just guiding and reviewing along with the localization teams, but they're working with the level designers to spot like puzzles and vignettes that just will not localize, so we'll have to pivot, we'll have to adapt. Now let's talk about, we mentioned these briefly, but we have animators and sound designers as well who are working with us. We are creating story scenes. These could be during gameplay, so fully interruptible, they're part of the simulation, or they could be blocking, AKA a cutscene. But these are critically always happening within the gameplay space. We're never creating environments that just exist for cinematics. These scenes will often drive the story forward, provide context or texture, impart clues that can progress a mission, and add to the atmosphere. So when you bring in the VFX artist and our wonderful tech direction, this allows us to create memorable set pieces like this, and other things too, but I think this is pretty cool. Okay, we're almost done. So we need one last key partnership that allows our missions and mechanics to meet our project's needs, vision, and full potential. So we have our user interface and user experience team. And they're doing more than just designing the UI. They want to push information directly to the player, what is interactive and how, and also help us develop the game flow. This is defining how missions are structured, like how does a player experience a mission in this game? So this will include player-facing elements like objective notifications, navigation markers, maybe the player has a journal, all the stuff that guides the player through their missions. But they're also like thinking about accessibility considerations, which is more than just a few UI features. We need interdisciplinary alignment built around accessibility as a goal. It's like not something to think about later. So this becomes foundational to our vignette design. So you are in UI, working with level design, narrative, and all these folks are also really trying hard to champion inclusivity and sensitivity into our work. We want to design so that no player is left behind, so no player arrives at a moment and they just realize, oh, I guess this game isn't for me, and then we lose them. So we want to spot topics that could raise concerns for different international audiences, and also take great care when dealing with content that features marginalized identities. So this is a lot. This is a lot of complex stuff. And now we have another problem, which is information silos. Oh no, how do all these people communicate? This is when information you need isn't getting to you, and sometimes information you have that isn't being communicated. So we have a lot of cross-disciplinary teams, and I'm going to skip through this really fast because I don't want to make everyone late for the party. There's a lot of different ways we have teams on the studio outside of everything we just talked about. And the important thing to know here is our producers are our heroes, but they're not omniscient. Many pairings have very broad focus, many teams have very tight focus, and you can't simply solve the problem by throwing docs at it if you don't know who to share the docs with and you don't know who is writing the docs that you need to read. So maybe we can solve this with a chart. Okay, let's do another chart. I like charts. So there's a thing called a RACI matrix, but I don't like that word. I turn it into the RC matrix, and I change those first two words to, approver and realizer. And these are the folks that we've already been talking about throughout this entire presentation. Approver is our goal setter, the realizer are the people doing the work. But here we're going to introduce those who are consulted and those who are informed. We often call these stakeholders, which of course isn't the same as an external stakeholder, but the idea is kind of the same. So let's run through this real fast. We already know our approver, we already know our realizer, so let's look at the consulted. For the mission design, as you're designing the mission, consult the user experience design team. They know what they're doing. Consult the narrative designers, consult the tech LDs. When you're working on the map, don't treat the env artists as just like folks who have tasks and do the work. Consult them, get their opinion, and also the tech artists. Mechanics have the most folks you need to consult, basically everybody. And if you're an artist working on the mise en scène, consult with the level designer, please. We can help you, and also the narrative designers, concept artists. For those who have to be kept in the loop, it's a bit more loose. If you're a mission author, talk with other mission authors who are working in the same story arc as you. If you're a map owner, talk with the folks working on the adjacent maps, either in the physical gameplay space or in the linear progression of the maps. Mechanics designers, there's going to be game pillars. There's going to be other mechanics that use the same pillar. Keep them informed. And when you're an artist working on the mise en scène, there's going to be other artists working with similar visual themes. Keep them informed. And yeah, keep your producer informed. They really like to be informed. Helps them stay omniscient. So this is a tool. It only works if it's used. It must list specific individuals. So my example chart is terrible. It actually has to name names. And it must be able to evolve and pivot as the project does as well. So this can be applied to anything. There's no rules about what gets an RC chart and which one and what doesn't. It's as needed. And yeah, let's go to the wrap up. Let's get everyone out of here. This talk is way longer than I thought it was. So to do this, let's recap. Let's revisit our definition of success and see if we can meet our goals. So are we going to elevate the game's pillars, systems of play, narrative and themes, art direction, and technology? We try to do this with our centralized direction, which is the creative director providing the vision, and the decentralized input, where the other directors and team leads are then fleshing it out using the design filters, the gameplay pillars, and themes. And together this forms the story, art, and tech direction. We want to work autonomously and aligned as teams. So the vision becomes goals, and these have to be clear, specific, and achievable. These goals are broken into problems we must solve to reach them, and the teams need to work to find the solutions together. And these solutions first are validated and then formulated into tasks. And if we're going to have debates, they need to happen in alignment, or the debate exists to build alignment. Arguments must happen within creative constraints, not nebulous or esoteric design philosophies. And if alignment has collapsed, which can often happen, you have to return to your team's raison d'etre and rebuild it from there. Are we going to capture the player's imagination, evoke a desire to engage with the game's world and the protagonist's goals? We try to build as a binôme, or we do build as a binôme. Our merged intentions bring combined expertise to the layout and flow of the map. We want to be in sync with systems. The mechanics exist within the level design and only reach their full potential when situated in meaningful context with the collaboration of both teams of designers. We need to storytell together. The missions can only be designed in collaboration with narrative and UX partners, which allows the level design to draw the player into our world, into its conflicts. We have to treat the player's goals as our goals. The maps, mechanics, and mission must come together seamlessly to immerse the player in a sense that their actions actually matter. Does it feel like a place or a moment in time that matters? We have no art pass. The artists help us define the game's vision and goals. It's not an afterthought. The art goals are as vital to the design and tech goals. And we are building alignment around the mise en scène as well. The work that goes into the level's sense of place is an equal priority to the other quadrants of level design. We need to avoid design determinism. These metrics can have a range of values that feel natural. And we want to keep believable worlds as one of our design filters, allowing us to zero in on solutions. We want to highlight gameplay via iterated visual codes and build a world that could exist without the player, or feels like it does. It never actually exists without the player. An experience that stays with the player after they finish the game. Do they remember and talk about it? We want to allow for novel emergent outcomes. We want player verbs and level mechanics that operate as systems. These systems interact to build off one another. And here we're having a dialogue. We communicate with the player through logical, understandable layouts and visual codes. The gameplay possibilities are readable through art, sound, animation, VFX. The player then can respond with intentionality, and we validate the intentionality with agency, and every opportunity to plan becomes personal, and every unique outcome becomes a story. And these personal stories can then be remembered and shared. So, is it delivered on a schedule, on a budget, to system specs? Does it meet accessibility needs? And is it not too terribly buggy? We have our producers who organize, guide, and develop cross-disciplinary workflows. We have our feature teams, map teams, strike teams, squads, buddy pairings, and crews that leverage diverse knowledge bases and skill sets. We need clearly defined stakeholders to inform and consult that mitigates information silos. And we need to leverage our technical experts. They're not just folks off to the side who do work. They're part of the dev team, these dev testers and build managers. The tech LDs and artists will then aid in the optimization and stability. Getting your game to 60 FPS is everyone's responsibilities. And then we have our QA team to help us get certified and shipped. And we need to be accessible and inclusive. We need to work with our UX and UR teams to reach accessibility goals and build inclusivity throughout the gameplay experience. And finally, is it created by a happy and healthy team using sustainable processes that can be repeated for ongoing success? We will avoid sunk costs by developing tools and processes to avoid chewing through hours on tedious work that erodes team morale. We need to create workflows for people. The power users in every team will work with the product owners to develop, iterate on, and deliver tools specifically for the people who will actually be using them. Game systems can be built to eliminate markup if possible or automate the process if not. And we need to prioritize team health. The work must match the person, the partnerships need chemistry and trust, and the organization must pivot when alerted to issues that impact its people. So finally, defining your studio culture is something that you do. It's what unites you. It's why you're a team. You need to document these values and make them visible. Bring them up in disputes and fight for them. And don't let anyone forget them. Only your team can decide that aligning around level design is part of your studio's culture. And I am like 15 minutes over. I'm so sorry, but thank you. And here is, oh, you're welcome. Here's a bunch of people that helped me out with the old talk and a bunch of people who helped me out with a new one. And thank you very much to the add-on staff. You all are wonderful. And we probably don't have time for questions, but in case you want to, oh, by the way, you can find me usually at Dana E. Knight. I'm at a bunch of places, and we're hiring right now, so check that out. And do you want to ask questions, or are we going to, like, everyone going to run out of the room? What's going on?
Yes, thank you for the speech. Actually, yes, we are running out of time. So what I invite you is to go over Dana after, or maybe at the party this evening, to ask her questions personally. Around like in the Café des Champs Libres. Thanks a lot again for your presentation.
You're welcome.